Hey, how's it going? Mike from LI Flies Mike, and today we have a special video. We're actually going to be tying a fly using Bill's Bodi-Braid, and shout out to Bill from Easy Body for getting in touch and sending me some materials to try out. If you'd like a chance to win this fly, stick around to the end and follow the instructions. But for now, let's get into the fly. I've been using Bill's Bodi-Braid and Easy Body for well over 20 something years now, ever since I was a kid, and first got into it with Ken Abrams style flies. So shout out again to Bill for sending some materials over my way, and we're going to be tying some Easy Body flies here in the near future. Today we're going to be tying the loop fly, which is one of Bill's patterns, and the fly is comprised of just one material. So we're actually going to be using Bill's Bodi-Braid here. And traditionally I'd be wrapping this on a hook shank for flat wings. Kenny Abrams tied with this for years. That's when I first kind of got introduced to it, but we're actually going to be tying the entire fly with Bill's Bodi-Braid. Now this fly is very interesting. Essentially it is comprised of various loops. So we're going to start building loops by folding the Bill's Bodi-Braid and then folding it back on itself. And what we're going to do is we're slowly going to start tapering our loops to make them shorter and shorter. So the way that it starts out with is we're actually going to start with essentially 5 loops here for the tail section. So we're going to take our tag end and we're going to tie this off the back. Now you can tie this by just forming the loops in your hand, but it was a little tricky for me to do that. So I figured it'd be easy just to tie it on the shank and start. So we start with our tag end off the back, and then we start building 3 loops essentially. One will be on either side and one will be on top. So for instance, I'm starting on the opposite side of the camera. So I'm going to start by building a loop. One thing for the sides is you want to try and make sure the loop kind of is a little bit further down towards the belly section. And then what we do is making sure that it's slightly shorter than the tag end as well. Then what we do is we move to the top, we tie a loop by folding the material back, and then we move to the opposite side, the camera side, and we're going to tie another loop. And essentially what we do is we make 5 loops here by just moving forward, by just slowly tapering the loops. So you can see we have the tag section, we have the top loop, the 2 sides, and then we have 2 more side pieces here. So you kind of want a total of like 5 loops, if you will. So just to clarify, all we're doing is tapering our loops forward. We're starting off with 1 longer loop, then 2 more loops that are slightly shorter, and then 2 more loops that are slightly shorter than that. We're essentially building our taper of the material by just adjusting the length of our loops. So it's a little hard to explain, but visually you can see here, hopefully it'll help, that the main lawn tail section is sticking off the back, and then we start moving forward by shortening our loop length. Now what we can do is we could start moving forward up on the fly here. For instance, if I ended on the camera side, I'll just start on that side. So after just kind of securing this material down to make sure it's nice and durable, it's not going anywhere, we're going to move up slightly so we can start tapering the fly and start with our loops again. And essentially what we're doing is we're building like a propeller shape. So think of a boat propeller. So it's almost like kind of like a triangle shape where the 2 loops are off to the side slightly lower, and the 1 loop on top gives us that top profile. So we're just going to keep moving up here, and if you haven't figured out already, you're probably looking like, how are you going to fish this fly with all these loops? But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to trim the loops in a way that we have a really nice taper. So you just got to stick around a little bit. But while I was tying this, I'm like, man, this is a crazy looking fly. But once you kind of get to the end, it all comes together. So again, forming our 3 loops in our propeller shape, the 1 on top, the 2 kind of on either side, positioned a little bit lower. You can see here's a good example of making sure that the loop, you can position the Bodi-Braid so that it's kind of slightly lower so you can get that propeller shape. But we're just going to essentially taper the size or the length of each loop down as we move up with each collar. So it's essentially very similar to like tying a bucktail deceiver or something, like a Popovix pattern where you kind of taper the material from long to short as you move up the hook shank. And we're essentially just doing that here with our loops of Easy Body. And now it's a little bit easier to see when you've moved up the hook shank visually what's going on. But again, we're just building our propeller shape. Try and make sure that your loops are positioned a little bit lower on the sides on the hook shank physically, so that way you get a little bit of belly material, you know. You want more of the material on top, I'd say, than you do want the belly, but the loops are kind of naturally tapering and position the material. So it is important to keep mind of positioning that lower section a little bit down more. So I kind of decided you can go with all one color, but he sent a bunch of different colors here. So there's like some silvers, there's a blue, there's a green. So I figured we could go ahead and use these kind of like minnow silver color, silver pearl, if you will. This silver pearl, if you will. I figured we could go ahead and kind of finish the front sides with that and then use some colors up top. So what I'm going to do here is wrap forward, apply a little bit of super glue just for some durability. That's a section I added. And we'll go ahead and use our loops here and move forward. And I'm going to use the silver pearl color on the sides. But again, you could tie this all in one color. You could tie in all gold, all silver, all pearl, for instance. But I had some different colors here, so I figured it'd be fun to mix something. So now I'm going to go with this kind of nice Kelly green, or this nice medium light dark green here. And I want to make sure that the top loop is a little bit longer because I like having my material be a little bit longer on top. And we can go ahead and trim this here. And again, it's quite an interesting looking fly while you're mid-process, but it does all come together. You don't need to worry about being too messy either with some of the loose hairs, because you'll see we're gonna take a brush of this when we're done. But we'll just move forward here to the last collar. And again, depending on the hook size and the length of the hook, the type of hook you use, you may use more ties than me, you may use less. It all depends. You just want to make sure you have a large enough hook to make sure that the fly keels properly. So adding some of this kind of nice deep blue here. I'm going to tie this on top after doing the kind of, I'll call it like a baitfish color almost for the sides there. And you can see all of our loops here that are kind of slowly tapering up. So again, just trying to get the taper length right by adjusting the loop length. Probably could have got the green a little bit longer on top, but in reality, this fly comes together once we start trimming it here. So you can almost make up for a lot of that by just how you trim the loops. And while editing this, looking at this piece of paper, I realized on the last step here, we should have a 4 propeller tie, but that's completely fine. He sent me beautiful instructions here, as you can see printed out for the loop fly, but I just wanted to show you this particularly for how to cut the material. You want to cut it at an angle. So the way you want to think about it is, for the top pieces, you want to cut it slightly shorter on the top section. And for the sides, you could see here, you want to cut it slightly shorter towards the front. Now, the whole idea is that, think of how the material is tapered, right? From front to back. So you want the piece that will unfurl to be a little bit longer than the piece that's in front of it when you cut it, if that makes sense. And the whole idea is we're creating a natural taper with the Easy Body by just trimming it in a particular way. I will say, I think I went a little bit too far forward with a lot of these cuts. I feel like you could get a little bit closer towards the center, but still try and be a little bit more forward. And that way you can get a little bit nicer of a taper. But this was the first time I've ever tried this fly. I just read the instructions, took the material, and I wanted to give it a go. So, and again, right now you got a bunch of just pieces of Easy Body cut on the hook shank, but wait till you see once we brush this thing out, it all comes together here. So just going through and cutting the loops. Again, on some of these loops, I think I cut them a little too far forward, but it's all just personal preference, right? As long as you have a nice, somewhat natural taper. So you could see how, depending on how far forward or how far back towards that center of the loop, by cutting it, you can adjust the length of the taper. So, like for instance, this cut on the green here, I think that was a little too far forward. Again, I'm just nitpicking. That's how I am with my fly tying. You know that if you watch me. So now that once we have this all cut out, we can brush it. I should probably whip finish first, and I'm going to realize this here in a second because it'll make it much easier. But you want to take a fine wire brush, and we're essentially, or a comb, like any sort of regular comb will work, because Easy Body is pretty easy to comb out, and you just want to start brushing this. So here I realized, let me throw a whip finish on this, take it out of the vise. It'll be much easier to brush. Now you can see once we start brushing this, that the cuts and the way that we made the tapers with the loops, we end up with just essentially a naturally tapered baitfish fly with this beautiful Easy Body. So For instance, I love fishing flashy flies for false albacore. Dave Skoke's mushmouth has always been a favorite of mine. I've used Bill's Bodi-Braid before in the tail sections of flies like this, or for little trout streamers, but I've never used it for a full saltwater fly, so I was actually pretty impressed with how easy this is to tie. I think visually it's a little confusing looking at while you're tying it, but in terms of technique, I think it's a pretty easy fly that really you could just teach anyone. Like, this wouldn't be a bad first fly to learn how to tie in reality. Again, just visually it might get a little confusing for new tyers, but I mean, it's such a quick and easy fly to tie, so I could see these being very effective for before you go albie, quick on the vise sort of fly, you know? So anyways, we're going to take some liquid fusion here. You could always use something like Softex. I don't have any on hand. I stopped using that commercially, but it's a great product. But we're going to use some liquid fusion here and just apply a small amount of this. And you can see I kind of spread the material away. And what I do here is I just essentially apply a small amount off the tail section to that first initial couple loops. And what that's going to do is that's going to stiffen up the tail so that this material isn't going to foul on us while we're casting to blitzing bass or albies or whatever, right? So now, as with any fly that we pretty much tie here on the channel, unless it's a dumbbell eye, it's pretty much not necessary. It's up to personal preference. I almost always put eyes on the flies here for the channel because they just visually look way better. And a lot of times it can help a fly really come together. In reality, do the fish care? I don't really know. But we're going to throw some eyes on here. You don't need to. This is definitely the sort of fly you don't have to put eyes on. But we're going to put some small stick-on eyes here, and then we're going to take our Solarez medium UV resin and just try and essentially build a little head here like we would on a mush mouth. Trying to be careful to not get too much of that resin on the flash material as well. You can see that's why I trimmed some of those loose hairs that were sticking up. Once you get resin on any sort of material, bucktail, synthetics, flash like this, it can become very stiff, and I don't like having any sharp kind of pointy areas on the head, so I want to make sure we have a nice clean area to work with. I'm just going to apply a pretty liberal amount, not go too heavy. I can always add some more, as you can see, after the resin settles a little bit. And just build a nice head straight from the bottle without having to use a bodkin. So I like using the Solarez bottle like this for just doing heads on deceivers. I don't even use the bodkin. All I do is kind of just slowly build the head up with the bottle. Again, trying to not get too much resin on there, but I can always clean off the tip of the bottle and then put the cap back on, so it works really well. And then all you do, as you can see, you can add some more if you need to, but you can just slowly turn your vise and that medium resin will kind of naturally spread around evenly. So now what we can do is take our UV light here and hit this, and you can see here this fly's lighting up because of course it's like all flash, so the UV is just kind of reflecting very interestingly. It looks really cool. And you can see here essentially what we're working with. You can see what I was saying where, I mean, this fly is fantastic, but you can see how I'm going for like a magazine look. I probably want to get the cuts on the loops a little bit better, but again, this is the first time I ever tied it, and it takes probably under 5 minutes to tie this fly. Well under 5 minutes. You could probably just bang out a bunch of these things if you really wanted to before you go fishing. But as you see, the Bill's Bodi-Braid loop fly by Captain Bill Murphy. Very cool fly. And again, shout out to Bill from Easy Body for sending some material over for me to play with. I think this is a fantastic fly. I was really pleased with it. I just took my scissors here and just did some final trimming in the end for some of the longer pieces of Easy Body that were sticking out because they may foul on me. In reality, a lot of these fibers are going to compress underwater anyway, as you'll see, but just to deal with any longer fibers, I trimmed them out. And once we put this in the swim tank, that's where it really starts coming to life. But again, I was very impressed with this fly. Very simple to tie. I'm surprised I haven't tied one sooner, and especially being that I've used this material for probably well over 20 years now. Overall, just a very easy fly to tie, and I was very surprised by the Bill's Bodi-Braid and how nice of a flash material it is when tied in this manner. And you can see in the swim tank here, just really comes together. It reminds me very much of like something like a mush mouth. I gotta say, I really love how the Bill's Bodi-Braid, once you unfurl it, I'll say, or unweave it with the comb, I mean, it's a fantastic flash material, so I got to start using it in this manner a lot more than instead of just wrapping it on the hook shank. Shout out again to Bill from Easy Body. He also sent over a bunch of different tubing and stuff like that, the Easy Body tubing for us to play with. So again, I can't thank him enough. I've been using this material for, again, well over 20 years. So okay, now if you'd like to win this fly, all you got to do is like the video, be subscribed to the channel, and comment something down below about this fly or this material. Well, thanks again to Easy Body and Bill over there for sending some materials. We'll probably make some more videos in the future here soon. And shout out to all of you for watching. Shout out to any of the new members and everyone who supports the channel by just watching our videos here. So, my name is Mike from LI Flies Mike. We have new fly fishing and fly tying videos every week. We have live fly tying on Friday nights, as well as early access for members. Well, thank you again for watching. Have a great rest of your season out there, even though it's getting short. And as always, tight lines.